All right, so I did my research project on documentation of wars. So, documentation in photography is a style of photography that provides an accurate representation of people, objects, and events. And we went over how it's not staged. It would have happened anyway, whether or not the photographer is there. And it has to have accurate representation of, people, objects, and events. And so I chose to do for this photo is the home of a rebel sharpshooter, Gettysburg, by Timothy O'Sullivan, as kind of an example of what it isn't. Um, because as we found out that this image was fully staged. So I decided to highlight different photographers from different wars. For the Civil War, I liked Matthew Brady. Um, it was the first look at war for civilians, and it just showed the reality of war, which a lot of people weren't um, accustomed to or noticed that often. So this one is Antietam, Maryland, Bodies of Dead, Louisiana Regiment by Matthew Brady. And it showed documentation photography showed civilians and people who are at home what war was really like. And this was just our first ever real look at um, the carnage and gore that went on, as well as the aftermath. So World War II, I chose two photographers. This one is Margaret Burke White, and is Buchenwald, 1945. And she is the first woman war correspondent, and she helped liberate concentration camps. So a lot of her photos do have to deal with concentration camps, and it's just so sad to see how they were treated in the conditions they were in, and it also gave proof that this actually happened, and that they couldn't just cover this up, and it let Americans know, as well as everyone else in the world, what was actually going on inside of those concentration camps. My other one that I chose is a kind of less documentation. This is Lee Miller. Um, it's more set up where I just love her photography style. It's very, most of her stuff, most of her photography is very unbiased, and it just shows the viewers what's going on without it being propaganda in some way. And so this one's Lee Miller in Hitler's bathtub. And I just think this is an iconic photo of her showing truly just, it was like hours after he killed himself. And so there's a photo of him on the tub, and his the boots and the dirty mat. It just really shows more of like a concept of like the world keeps going, and just like the juxtaposition of what she's doing with what's going on, I think is just fairly interesting. And then I did the Vietnam War, the photographer David Hume Kitterly, and I've talked about this photo specifically. I couldn't find the title of it anywhere, but I talked about it in one of my previous like weekly reflections, and I just love this photo because it's it's truly just a candid photo of this soldier, and it's just what conditions were like, and he's just huddled under a jacket by himself, trying not to freeze, just thinking about what's going on, where he's at, the possible consequences of what's going to happen later. And I just, just the emotion he's showing, it's just he took his camera, snapped a picture of this man. I don't think it could have been set up anyway, and he was definitely um, you know, just showing an everyday soldier just trying to get through. the time. And that's why we're excited. I just think, going back through all of these, documentation is very important in our society, and trying to figure out a way to do that, document an event or a person or objects without having that bias and propaganda, and just telling stories of like a peek into reality is so deeply important nowadays that I don't that was just what I liked looking at. So